Donny Irving is with you and me. Donny lives in the hood in Grand Rapids, but you're not from the hood. You grew up in a small town, Delton, and that's down by Kalamazoo, and probably a couple thousand people.
Yeah, small town.
And now you're living in inner city Grand Rapids. You were looking for a house to buy, a cheap house to buy, and it happened to be inner city Grand Rapids. You said, hey, great deal. I'm going to go live in the hood.
Yeah, basically did a Google search, cheapest house in Grand Rapids, and it turned out to be probably the worst neighborhood in Grand Rapids, of course. So location. I actually went to the worst location possible, but just wanted to see what God would have in store with that. So
yeah. And to be fair, you did have a ministry reason for moving into inner city Grand Rapids. So your first vision was to start a prayer house.
Yeah, and so there were some prayer house communities around Grand Rapids and just around in the country that were starting up, and I really liked the idea of just gathering together for prayer, for worship, and so I decided that would be a good way to use the house to glorify God, would be to start a prayer house and try to get people gathered together, but it was really hard to get people gathered together for that. Yeah. And so after a few months of just trying to get people to gather together for prayer, for worship, it just was really discouraging at that time and just sort of gave up on.
So the idea with the prayer house was, come together, worship, pray. Hopefully some of God's presence kind of spills out into the neighborhood.
That's, I guess, the way I would see it. Just sort of bring God's presence to the neighborhood. Yeah. But I don't know, for some reason, it just didn't fly. It was just really difficult to do that.
And this is a neighborhood where, there are street gangs. They just welcomed you with open arms. They just said, thanks, Donny, for coming.
No. When I first moved in, they actually all thought I was wired by the cops.
Okay.
They didn't want anything to do with me. They avoided me. I was kind of scared of them, but they were kind of scared of me because they thought, who is this guy moving in? They'd always stare me down whenever I walked outside. They'd always stare me down. They just did not want me being there.
Mm-hmm. One day you were out mowing grass and they whistled you over?
It was actually not the street gangs, but just some guys. They were just older guys. They just said, hey, come over here. Oh boy, what do they want? And they're all out on the porch. And the one guy on the porch, he asked when I was going to rent out the place.
Rent it out?
Yep. Not live in the place. He just assumed that I was fixing it up to rent it out. And I actually was like, hey, I'm going to move here. And he was like, do you realize what kind of neighborhood this is? And he's like, bro, the neighborhood is not for you, or the hood is not for you.
Right. Street gangs actually threatened to beat you up.
Yep, they would threaten. They would, several occasions where they made verbal threats. I just remember one time just walking down the street, and he was like, we don't want any ops in this neighborhood. We're going to do what we can do to get you out of here. Also, at that time, they tagged my house.
Which means?
Basically, they spray painted. I would say the street gangs, it's not like any organized gangs. It's just, I feel like just more a bunch of guys who are just up to no good, just sort of drug dealing, just doing some things. They just did not want me being there.
Donny Irving, living in inner city Grand Rapids, and God had some special plans, even though he got rejected at first. So, Donny, you got this idea to put up a basketball hoop in your backyard. You wanted to just be able to retreat to your backyard, shoot some hoops, not watch people doing drugs and smoking weed on their porches. So, you didn't have any great spiritual ideas in mind when you put up that basketball hoop.
I loved to play basketball. Tried playing basketball a few times at parks. Again, people didn't want me being at the parks. And I was like, man, I'm just going to set up a hoop in my backyard. It was all concrete. And so I put the hoop in the backyard. And I'd say a few days after I put the hoop in the backyard, there's some neighborhood kids that would just come and play basketball. And I was like, this is weird. Why would they come to play basketball in some guy's yard that they don't even know? I was like, I'm just going to let them play, just because they're probably just avoiding the parks, just because it's so dangerous. And got to know their moms just to say, hey, I got this hoop. And so that all their moms were cool with it, because I'm sure they didn't want their kids at the parks either. Every time I'd go down there, it was just fights.
So you just opened up your backyard hoop?
Just let the kids play. More kids started just playing basketball in the backyard.
So you got this idea pops in your head to start a Bible study and maybe a way to reach the neighborhood.
After I saw just the need from the kids, especially getting to know them through playing basketball, just a lot of them had a lot of anger issues, just a lot of issues going on in their lives, just getting to know them.
Most of them don't have dads.
Yeah, I found out most of them, I'd say probably 9 out of 10 of the kids in my neighborhood didn't have dad or a father figure. And just seeing that, thought, the way to cure this problem, was starting a little Bible study with them.
Mm-hmm. And I know you wanted to actually lead some of these kids to Jesus. So the first Bible study went great.
Oh, no, not at all. The first Bible study, all the kids started fighting.
Mm-hmm.
They, basically were not paying attention at all, could not hold their attention. And after that, I just was completely frustrated with them.
So the Bible study totally went south, wheels came off, and how did you feel?
Yeah, I just basically threw in the towel and said the kids were far beyond changing, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And so I'm basically deciding to never do a Bible study, and also take the hoop down and not let them in my backyard because they were just so frustrating, and I just did not want to deal with it.
So from the time you saw this great deal on the house up to the time we're speaking, it's all been downhill.
Yeah.
All been downhill. And on top of it all, you have this roommate. This guy's part of the street life, and you have him come and move in your house because it looks like he wants to get his life back together, but ultimately he really doesn't. And now you want to get him out of your house, but you can't get him out of your house. And so take us to the night when you finally got him out of your house and what God taught you through that.
Throughout the first time being in the neighborhood, I was definitely scared and just wanted out. And I just felt very vulnerable. And so this guy, I was really naive. I thought, he wanted to change, but he was taking advantage of me. And I cleaned out his room. He had a machete in the room. He came home that night with blood on his face, and then he started approaching me. And at that point, I just felt the Spirit of God just told me you just got to preach to this guy. And so I just started preaching the word. And at that point, first I thought he was going to attack me. Mm-hmm. At that point, he started backing up.
Once you started preaching?
Yeah, once I started preaching. And it was totally God speaking through me because that would not be anything I would ever think of doing. Normally, I would just want to run.
And so he backed off and he moved out.
Yep.
What did God teach you through that?
I think the big thing God taught me was to fear him and not man. Because I feel like I'd always sort of tend to fear what people could do to me, the street gangs, or just what people could do to me. And God was basically saying, keep me first, fear me, because ultimately I'm in control.
So that really was a sign from God, the first sign that, you know what, Donny, you're on the right path.
Yeah, it was definitely confirmation just that God had my back and that God was there with me and that I wasn't alone.
Donny Irving, living in the hood in Grand Rapids. God is working through this young guy in some amazing ways because he simply moved into inner city Grand Rapids. He stepped out of the boat. He came out of his comfort zone, and God has shown up in his life. Donny, you moved into inner city Grand Rapids to really reach out to the neighborhood. You had a goal of starting a prayer house, a place where people could come and worship and pray, and hopefully God's presence would touch the neighborhood. That fell through. The neighborhood rejected you, didn't want you there. You set up a basketball hoop in your backyard. Kids started coming around, so you decided to start a Bible study. First Bible study, everybody gets into a fight. All the kids start fighting. So you shut the Bible study down, and you're thinking about taking the hoop down. Everything up to this point has gone wrong, and you're feeling like giving up, and you're thinking about moving out. But then somebody approached you.
Yeah, one of the kids who actually was a part of the fighting, he ended up approaching me and asking me if we could do another Bible study. Wow, this is interesting. The kid who was the culprit of, messing up the Bible study was asking for another Bible study. And at that point, I felt like I couldn't turn down a kid asking for Bible study, so I just said, all right, we'll try this thing again.
So you did. What happened at the Bible study?
The kids, they were a little bit better, but they were still, I just felt like I didn't have the patience for them. But sort of from there, I think I could see that they were at least hungry, and I think they were asking more questions and a little bit more curious about what God and the Bible and Jesus is all about. And so just sort of kept on teaching them.
It was a pretty good Bible study, and you just kept doing it, and it's been growing.
Yeah, the kids just kept on inviting their friends, neighbors, just started this small Bible study. And pretty much most of the kids I sort of just got to know through the neighborhood, became friends with their moms, aunties, grannies, just sort of kind of took off after they started inviting their friends. And I think the kids just wanted a safe place to go to avoid the streets and just give them just a different atmosphere.
So you moved into the hood. You had some idea of, I want to make a difference here, and Satan threw everything at you to get you out of there. And God was testing you and showing you that you can't do it on your own. And so he taught you how to draw from his strength. And now, God has just turned the corner. You've got these kids coming to the Bible studies. You're speaking into their lives.
And that's what it's all about, and I would say the ministry or just the things that are going on right now is just all about relationships. There's not anything fancy about it. There's really no building, no program. It's just about building relationships in the neighborhood, getting the kids, just building relationships and telling them about Christ.
And have you had some kids really genuinely decide to follow Jesus?
Yeah, I would say definitely I've noticed some fruits from some of the kids. I mean, some of the kids, they still are going down the wide path, heading for destruction, but some of the kids, you can definitely see that God is working in their lives.
Donny Irving, living in the hood in Grand Rapids, God has done some amazing things. He didn't think he could make it there, but now he's got a weekly Bible study of kids in the neighborhood, and these are kids mostly without dads who've really not heard anything about the Bible, and God's Spirit is working in inner city Grand Rapids. You moved into the hood in Grand Rapids, and just so many things didn't go well until things turned the corner and kids started regularly coming to this Tuesday night Bible study. But God encouraged you to stick with it. One of the ways he encouraged you to stick with it was, once this Bible study got rolling and you had the spaghetti dinner miracle.
Yeah. In the Bible study, when it started, when the kids started inviting their friends, just never knew how many kids would come to a Bible study. Start off around like 5 to 10 kids. And then there's one week where I was planning, just a sort of a small pot of spaghetti to the kids, expecting, just around maybe 10 kids, and like 30 kids showed up. I just had just a little bit of spaghetti, and I basically said, I'm going to go ahead and try to serve the spaghetti, see if we can get all the kids served, and hopefully, and then I can figure out something, after the spaghetti runs out, figure out something else. And what happened, basically all the kids end up going through the line, and there was enough left over for seconds. And at that point, I wasn't really realizing what was going on. I was just sort of serving the spaghetti, and then I said, all right, guys, time for seconds. And all the kids came through and got seconds, or most of the kids came through and got seconds. And then after that, there's still leftover spaghetti.
Wow. So you had enough spaghetti for 10 kids, and 30 kids were there, and they've gone through the line twice, and there's still leftovers.
Yep.
This is sounding kind of familiar to me.
Yeah. And so it's definitely like the fish and loaves. Looking back at it, I could see God's hand, and basically God saying, just keep going, and I'm going to provide for what you need, and God has done that.
Donny Irving, by God's grace, a beacon of light in inner city Grand Rapids. He's living there. So, Donny, you've got this hood ministry because you live in the hood in Grand Rapids. You've got this Tuesday Bible study. You've got a bunch of young kids coming to this Bible study, but you're still living in this house by yourself, and you still need help. Personally, I think you need another guy to come and live with you who shares the same passion.
Yeah, I think that's my desire. My original desire was to try to get guys from college or guys who are interested in ministry to give them just a practical way to do ministry and to move in and to basically share life with the neighborhood. And it's just been a sort of a struggle. I had a few guys for a while. They ended up all moving out for various reasons. And now I'm kind of alone again.
Jesus sent out his workers 2 by 2, and I really think it's biblical. So I just want to challenge you. You might consider getting a hold of Donny, just moving into the hood with him and reaching out to these kids. Donny works a regular job. He's got a day job, and he's just doing this ministry after hours. And so you could take a first step by getting a hold of Donny, sitting down for coffee with him, getting to know him, hearing his heart, him hearing your heart, then maybe volunteering in the ministry, and then perhaps you could become a key part of his work in inner city Grand Rapids. The harvest is huge and the workers are few. And you can make the first contact with Donny at
Donny Irving at gmail.com. It's DonnyIrving at gmail.com.
Very good. Donny Irving at gmail.com. Okay, so other areas where you have need, one of the things is meals.
Yeah, it's been really neat opportunity through a church that I'm a part of.
They've set up a meal plan organizer.
And so I've been having people sign up for meals, bringing meals to Tuesday night Bible studies. Such a huge blessing to have.
So if you want to provide meals for the Tuesday night Bible study, just contact Donny. That's DonnyIrving at gmail.com. Donny Irving, IRVING, Donny with a Y, Donny Irving at gmail.com. Any other needs that you have?
I mean, financial needs, because I do try to get the kids out of the neighborhood. And, basically if I could have a set of people who are willing to provide for activities for the kids, go to Whitecaps baseball games, go to beach days.
So you just want to provide opportunities to get the kids out of the hood.
Pretty much that sort of all comes out of my own pocket, and just having people maybe helping with that, or even have needs for tables and chairs.
And that would be for your backyard where you have the Bible study during the nice weather, of course.
The kids find ways to destroy things. So I had a picnic table and it's completely destroyed at this point.
And again, you can get a hold of Donny at DonnyIrving at gmail.com. Let's talk about getting closer to Jesus. I want to get closer to Jesus. You want to get closer to Jesus. But I think you've discovered a way to get closer to him that is outside the box, yet biblical.
I think usually what's preached is if someone becomes a Christian, read your Bible and pray. That's great. Not knocking it, but I think after a while, this is even my own walk. I can get dry. I just feel that there's even more of a need. I just still want to dig deeper. And so basically, as far as, just drawing close to Jesus, what I've sort of found out is when I'm on the streets, dealing with hurting people, dealing with people who are different from me, I see my need for him even more, and I just develop just a closer walk with him. And I don't see that when I'm just comfortable, just getting out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. And another analogy, stepping out of the boat.
Yeah.
That's scary.
When you step out of the boat, that's when you have to keep your eyes fixed on Christ. Because if you don't, you're going to drown. Keeping your eyes fixed on Christ, and the only way you really figure out your need for fixing your eyes on Christ is when you put yourself in those vulnerable situations.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I love this scripture, when Jesus says, I was hungry and you fed me, I was thirsty, gave me something to drink, I was naked and you clothed me. And just that passage, with the least of these, Jesus says, there I am. I'm among the least of these. And I feel like sometimes we think that God's presence is in a church building or holy places, but God's presence is in the streets, in the hood, in the place where the least of these, in the city, there's just a lot of hurting people and a lot of people, who are sort of the least of these in our society. And I just feel like there you can find God's presence among the least of these.
If you want to get closer to Jesus, then reach out to the least of these, because Jesus is there in the faces of the poor.
And that's where it's at. Just reaching out to the hurting people, to the least of these, to people who are different from you, and you draw closer to God.